Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to wait a few moments to let everyone in, but it is fantastic to see all of you with us this evening. I'm very much looking forward to speaking with you. Just going to give it a few more seconds for people to come in. Fantastic. So a very warm hello for everyone joining us this evening. Thank you so much for taking your evening to come and be with us. This is InvestIN Answers, where you have an opportunity to talk to us a bit about the internships that we have on offer and ask your burning questions. So my name is Karina Walker, and I'm a partner development manager here at InvestIN Education, which means that I work with schools and with students to help them develop employability skills and really enhance their career prospects. Joining us as well this evening, we have some of our top professionals from our most favorite 5 career areas who are here to answer your questions about the fantastic internships that they take part in. And working behind the scenes from the InvestIN team today, we've got Emily, Amy, Alicia, and Miranda, who are here to make sure that all of your questions get answered and to make sure that the internships and these kind of webinars run nice and smoothly. But to give some context, so this webinar is actually part of a webinar series that we have called Success Beyond School. Now, these are free webinars that we give for parents to give them an opportunity to get some real insight into different career areas and to help support their child's career development. So far this term, we've had our skill surgery based on medical applications and also one of our networking webinars. And I can see that there are some familiar names coming up on the screen, which is really fantastic. But for those of you who might be slightly less familiar with InvestIN, I'll give a very brief overview of who we are and what we do. So we were founded in 2012, and we exist to give these immersive career experiences which bridge the gap between school and the workplace. And these experiences that we provide are in 20 different career areas and give students the opportunity to try out their dream career before they've even gone off to university. And in that way, we ensure that a student can make a really informed career decision while they are still at school. Now, all of the programs that we have available are created or curated by leading professionals within those industries, so that students can really try out the kind of work that they might do in that career, can network with these fantastic professionals, and also receive some career coaching into how to break into these really competitive professions. And while we have these 20 career areas, all of our programs are based around some really sort of fundamental beliefs that we have. The first is skills, and that's what are employers actually looking for. Then networks, because in a world where 70% of jobs aren't even advertised, it's never been more important to have a really strong professional network. Of course, experience, which is essential no matter what career you want to go into, but particularly in the last year has been very difficult to find. Advantage, which is just learning the science of recruitment and how to stand out from a crowd of competitors. And of course, knowledge. What do you need to know and how should you talk about it? And one other really important element to any of our programs is, of course, interactivity. And that's something that we're going to be doing with you as well this evening. So we use an app called Slido on our programs. If you want to use your mobile phone or open a web browser, head online and type in that code slido.com and then enter the event code summer 2021. You will be able to submit questions to us live throughout this webinar, which us and our professionals will be able to answer for you. And what I will say is, if at any point your internet cuts out or you have an issue, please don't worry. We will be recording the session this evening, and so you will be able to access it if you have any issues. So we'll see if people have got onto Slido and it's working for them. So let's try our first Slido question just to see that everything's working. And the question that I've got for you, once you've got onto Slido and put in that event code, is where are you logging in from this evening? Fantastic. I can see that we've got some responses coming in. So if we could display those. Brilliant. I can see London's come ahead. Oh, but fantastic to see what people from Switzerland. Shout out to Scotland. Fantastic. And I mean, actually all over the globe. And thank you so much for that, Emily. That's great to see. And really fantastic to see everyone from all over has come to join us this evening. And I suppose then that just brings us on to talking about why we are here this evening. And obviously kind of ostensibly, it's just to learn about these fantastic summer internships that InvestIN has and how those opportunities can really benefit your child. But we have to put that into context, which is that we know the last year has been incredibly difficult for all of us, but particularly challenging for students and for our children. And trying to find work experience and in-person opportunities has been just one of the challenges that they faced recently. And so it was very interesting to see, of course, that in the Skills and Enterprise report that was very recently published, 70% of students in year 13 had said that they just hadn't been able to develop these key skills that they knew they needed for their career because of the pandemic. And more than that, 68% of students also said that they just hadn't been able to find any experience at all. And so, of course, as a parent, you sit there and you wonder, what can I do to help? What can I do to support you now? And so that's why it's so great to see so many of you with us this evening, so that we get to talk to you about these fantastic summer internships in 12 different careers and how they can really help to support your child's career ambitions. And before I kind of talk about these a bit more and introduce you to some of our professionals, I'm just going to play a very brief video to give you an idea of what has occurred on past internships. Well, it wouldn't be a Zoom call without a technical error, would it? So. Got ahead of myself a bit there. So the internships that we offer are these fantastic once in a lifetime experiences that give a child the opportunity to try real work experience in their dream career in London. And so these are up to 10 days of really sort of life-changing, immersive, super curricular experiences. Attending one of these programs is something that many of our students like to use going forward as part of university applications, and of course, looking for further experience as well. And as I mentioned before, kind of a key feature of all of our programs, and particularly with our internships, is the fact that they are all developed by leading professionals within their field. And so within all of these 12 industries that you can see on the screen. And as I mentioned before, building a really strong professional network organically, particularly for a student, can be quite difficult. And so this is something that we put a lot of emphasis on when we do our internships. And I'm very pleased to say that last summer those internships did indeed go ahead with all of the kind of requisite social distancing measures in place. And we got some great feedback from our students at 9.2 out of 10, which I think is testimony to just how valuable they found that opportunity. But of course, don't just take my word for it. We've got on the screen now kind of some of the feedback that we've got from our students. And in particular, I think the caliber of the professionals that we work with And also the idea that we develop key skills like confidence in young people to really start to treat themselves as young professionals are the things that always stand out to me when I look at feedback, like you can see now. And so in line with thinking about the amazing professionals that we work with, I am delighted to introduce you to professionals from our medicine, engineering, law, architecture, and political leader programs. And to save you from having to listen to me all evening, I'd like to ask each of them to just kind of turn on the cameras and come forward and turn and introduce themselves, and perhaps give a little bit of background as to what they particularly like about kind of the internship that they lead on. So Manik, if I could please ask you to turn on your camera and introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Karina. Yes, hi. So hi, everyone. So my name is Manik. I am a doctor and I'm the program director for the Young Doctor program and the Young Doctor Internships. I've been doing this for a number of years now. And I not work in the NHS normally in sexual health and HIV medicine. And I'm also an academic clinical fellow at UCL involved in research there. So I was having a think about the things I was most looking forward to kind of this summer, being able to go back to doing internships again. And I mean, there was lots and lots of things I think about. I think the number one thing that I'm looking forward to is kind of being able to get the students to meet real patients again. One of the things that I always find quite interesting and quite funny actually is that, you know, we'll do these internships and have, you know, we'll use virtual reality headsets and they can try on to have an immersive experience. They'll have robotic patients which can do all sorts of interesting stuff and put them into an emergency simulation using this robotic patient. But in the comments and the feedback afterwards at the end of the internship, the thing that they always take away and they love the most is talking to real patients. So literally a table, some chairs, but it's that human interaction that they really, really enjoy. And it's really quite fun and interesting to watch them kind of learn about how to speak to patients, how to communicate with patients really well. And so that's something I'm really looking forward to. The other thing that I think I always really enjoy and the students get really excited about is something we call the diagnostic escape, which is essentially centered around kind of an escape room game where they utilize lots of different skills that doctors will use. So think about lateral thinking, problem solving, pattern recognition, arithmetic. And then they usually get quite competitive because there'll be a prize to get whoever completes it and then works out the correct diagnosis for their patient. So I think that's something that the competitive spirit that brings out in them is always really, really fun as well. And the last thing I think I always really enjoyed as part of the internships is kind of being able to do ethical discussions in a really detailed way. Medicine, you know, there's all the practical elements of it, the scientific elements of it, but there's huge ethical elements to the job. And the pandemic has absolutely brought that forward as well. So that's the third thing that I think I'm really looking forward to.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Manik. And I would say if anyone does have any questions for Manik or any of our professionals as we go through this, please do pop onto Slido and get into our Q&A function. And I'm sure Manik will be very happy to answer any questions that you've got in our Q&A in just a bit. Brilliant. And so let's move on then to Ella.
Hello, everyone. My name's Ella Podmore, and I'm a keynote speaker for the engineering program. I am lead materials engineer for the supercar brand called McLaren Automotive, and I've been doing these kind of speeches for InvestIN for about 2.5 years now. And the program is, I do a lot of these engineering programs, and this program is utterly fantastic. So what we tend to offer on the engineering side of things, of course, there are so many divisions in which your students, your kids can go into in terms of engineering. And we really try to grasp that in our program. So the diversity in which we have, me being a materials engineer, we have biotissue engineers, robotic engineers, everyone from, we've had visitors from California, like the worldwide spread of engineers that we have talking at these particular events is fantastic. Now, in these internships, we offer everything from physical engine teardowns to university tours, career advice from people such like myself working in industry, but then also people in PhDs, some fantastic Q&A panels, and some real personal touches, one-to-one breakout rooms, for example. We offer two different types of internships, one being the Young Engineer Program, so that is looking at 15 to 18-year-olds, and then future engineers being slightly younger than that. Just round off to say that it's utterly fantastic, and if anyone is interested in sending me some questions about engineering, about what I do, just submit them on Slido and we talk about them later.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ella. And of course, it's interesting to see that when it's impossible to get a child into the car for a school pickup, I've never seen the students run more quickly towards a supercar on that program. And so next up, we've got Omar, who heads up our Young Lawyer Internship.
Hi, my name is Omar. I'm the program manager for the Young Lawyer Internship, as Karina just said. Yeah, I'm a lot closer to where the students were. I graduated in 2018, did a master's, and then I'm currently undergoing my bar course training and have secured pupillage to become a barrister and start my training as a barrister end of this year. And the one thing that always strikes me is how much I wish I had this. On our internship, the things I'm most looking forward to, top three. The first one is seeing the students develop, because we teach them a number of skills: legal advocacy, client handling skills, tactical thinking in legal situations, and handling high volumes of data. And it's always so impressive on our programs to see them start a little bit nervous, maybe not so confident, or even maybe good, but with space to improve. And then by the end of the 10 or 5 days, they're just so much better in such a short amount of time. And that's something that's always so inspiring. And again, I'm super envious of the students by the time they get to that stage, because I didn't have that when I was approaching my applications. The second thing I'm really excited about is after we get the students engaged in the criminal murder trial and the corporate law sessions, where they actually get involved in conducting the kinds of tasks that lawyers will usually conduct in their everyday lives, we then often get the professionals to demo these things. We have the barristers actually deliver their closing speeches and their examination of witnesses. And no matter how many times I see this, I always learn from them and take away points that I would like to use in my future practice. And just that is super exciting for me. And I can't wait to see that again. A little bit selfish. And then the final thing is the venues. We get to visit the Royal Courts of Justice, the Supreme Court, skyscrapers in the middle of City of London, and the Inns of Court. And these are all highly important legal venues, generally speaking, and just the sense of grandeur that they give is just immutable. It doesn't change. Every time I go into them, it's crazy to think this is where law happens, this is where key laws are made, developed, applied, and it's just an experience that I didn't get, and I'm always so excited to see the kids' reactions to visiting these key legal places.
That's brilliant to hear. Thank you, Omar. And I think that's such an interesting point to raise, of course, is that when we spent a year largely virtual, as we are now, the chance to kind of go in-house, and particularly for things like the Royal Courts of Justice, you really see students come out and behave like professionals and treat themselves like lawyers in a way that's, I think, very hard to replicate. So thank you for that. Again, if you do have any questions for Omar, please head on to Slido and let us know. And so next up, Carl, if you would like to turn your camera on, and Carl works as our sort of young architect leader.
Hello, hi everyone, good evening. And I'm Carl Mock, and I am the founder of the spatial design practice TAR Lab. I'm also Associate Lecturer of Architecture at Newcastle University. And I also have co-founded the Asian Architects Association. We're doing a lot of interesting stuff recently. So if you want to head over to our Instagram, feel free. But thank you very much for tuning in this evening to listen a bit more about our 5 programs. I think it's really interesting listening to everyone on this panel. We're all sort of really enthusiastic, really passionate about what we do, and we're all professionals. And I think perhaps where the Young Architect program is something that's quite interesting and quite different is that the Architect program is one that's creative. It's very much about design. And as a career path, was famously exhausting, 7 years minimum to qualify before you even get there. And the best thing is that I've been through all that. I know what it's like. And I think when we started setting up this program, and I was there since the very beginning, we first started setting up this program, it was very much about trying to condense the complexity that is architecture into what would be a 5 or 10-day program. So we have 2 programs in the summer, which is the 5-day live online internship and a 10-day in-person internship. And I think, having had a hand very early on, beginning of these courses, trying to sculpt and mold this, we've gone through so many iterations now that I can't tell you the sheer perfection of the course that we've kind of got to now. And, architecture very much being about people, about being the design, and trying to get into their heads and trying to give them a sense of what is architectural thinking. I myself work a lot in the intersection of architecture and interior design, so I can see the benefits that design brings to a lot of my clients, a lot of people, firsthand. And I think it's the things that the students really appreciate and in all our programs is that sort of experience and understanding of what we talk about when we as architects talk about design thinking. How do you process a brief to become something really developed, really complex, that it's not just lovely to look at, it's not just aesthetically pleasing, but actually something you can live inside, a machine for living, a machine for working and functioning. And all that's had a lot more connotation now that we're stuck inside in these sort of strange dystopian times. How are we as architects forming these environments, all the more so that you're all stuck indoors, and the way that they do that in both programs is, we do lots of live sketching demonstrations. We take them through the concepts, we take them through design as a step-by-step process. So it's not to worry, we have students who come in who are brilliant students. I have personally been in touch with a lot of our alumni from the InvestIN program, and they've gone off to places like Cambridge, UCL, and they're fantastic. But what it really helps is a student who has no background in design, no background in art, like myself. I didn't come from an arts background. My A levels were notoriously scientific. But coming in there and having somebody sort of lead you through this process, what it takes to do design, the stages that it takes to develop a brief, that is what I think is really, really key about what we do in our program. And besides, on top of that as well, I think the other thing that I really enjoy is the sort of like skills-based program. We've had a transition over the years of trying to refine the Young Architect program to become a bit more skills-based. The reason for that being that this is what's going to get you through the door when you need to get your first job. Architecture is intensely competitive. I can't begin to describe how hard and how difficult the competition is out there. So it's really important that on top of having that really wonderful sort of slightly whimsical design education, you also have the hard skills that will back it up and get your foot through the door. And of course, the site visits to these, top universities like Cambridge and Bartlett, and the top architecture firms in the world like Foster's, they're pretty good as well. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carl. And I think one point you raised there, which is really important, is that oftentimes students come in thinking that they have to have sort of pre-existing knowledge in a career. So kind of emphasizing there that it's accessible for everybody, and oftentimes demystifying this idea you have to have one career path to get into these kind of careers. So thank you so much for that. Again, I'm sure you guys do have questions for Carl, so please do let us know and we'll answer those in the Q&A. And so that brings us last but definitely not least, Dominic, if you would like to introduce yourself as the leader for our Young Political Leader program.
Good evening to everyone joining us from the UK and whatever's appropriate wherever you might be, if not the UK. I'm delighted to have been the program director on our Young Political Leader program since 2018 now, since we started doing a Young Political Leader program. It's been this amazing kind of journey, refining what we do, making it into the best experience possible. And this 10-day internship is, I think, the kind of the best example of what we offer of all of the programs. And it's just a really amazing experience. I'm really proud of it for the work we've done to make it so good. And it's all about all these buzzwords we've heard from other people: skills, experience, knowledge, networking, interactivity. But I want to kind of explain why all those things actually apply to this course. And so, we teach and practice skills that you need in politics. Now, politics is not like lots of these other careers. It doesn't have a qualification you can achieve and then you're ready to be a politician or work in politics. It's one that requires skills from all across the board. So we teach kind of negotiation skills, analytical skills, public speaking skills, networking tips, tricks, how to kind of get yourself ahead in something that is, I think, to lots of parents, a complete mystery how you maybe would move forward in a career like this. We familiarize our students with some of the people that are involved. So we bring along former ministers, we bring along people who've written speech, who have been speechwriters for CEOs, for cabinet ministers. We bring along people who work in politics today as civil servants. So we bring along highly political people in kind of a party political sense. We bring along people who work in the civil service. We bring along people from international organizations like the UN. So we had someone who used to be what was he? He was the chief speechwriter to the UN Secretary General. We have this wide range of people that people have never met before, people that do these jobs, and we familiarize them with them. And we also inform them on what careers are right for them. I always think that if what we've done is we've said, if we've given someone the knowledge that this is a career that's right for them, and even if it's the knowledge that this isn't a career that's right for them, that has been a massive success. And so we're really proud of that. But all the way through, we do this in a totally interactive way. And so we do this by holding discussions. We do a mock parliamentary debate, and we actually bring in a sitting MP along who then debates with all of our students and talks to them about how they've delivered their argument. Says, if I was in the chamber speaking, I would use that as well. You've done that fantastically. Or actually, when we're in the chamber, we don't do that kind of thing. And it's interactive experiences that really give people a kind of a vision into an industry that is, I think, really shut off to lots of people. Omar was saying earlier that this is something that he wishes had existed. We had the same thing said by Caroline Flint, the former Europe minister, who was saying, I wish my kids had had access to this because this is so fantastic. We're really proud of it. It's a really fantastic course, and I am delighted to be here to answer any questions you might have about it. This summer's programme is going to be fantastic. We're going all over London. We're going to open with a reception on the terrace of the House of Commons, COVID rules allowing. We're going to kind of take them to kind of some of those buildings in London that you see and look all closed off, but have these fantastic interiors. We're going to introduce them to young people who are involved in all this stuff. We've got this guy, Ben, who does our bit with the FCO, who's the youngest person to have worked for the permanent undersecretary and has now gone off and is working for the Foreign Office abroad representing the UK at only about 24. He is absolutely fantastic. It's a really great course. I'm really looking forward to answering questions about it later.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dom. And of course, again, if you do have questions, please pop them into Slido. I think another important thing that's emphasized there is that oftentimes when you're young and you're making career decisions, you don't know what that actually means. If you want to be an engineer or want to be a lawyer, and oftentimes we find when a student comes on a program that actually it's only when they try out the kind of work, like, I'm a solicitor, I'll do the kind of solicitor work. It's not like what they saw on Suits, it's something completely different. And so it's kind of demystifying and making it more accessible, which is a really key component of all of the work we do. And obviously you've heard from 5 of our fantastic professionals there. We do have, as I said at the beginning, 12 internships available for students aged 15 to 18. So if you are an aspiring psychologist, computer scientist, investment banker, entrepreneur, vet, dentist, or filmmaker, there are internships available for you. With highlights such as, well, my favorites are, so for example, on the computer scientist internship, you would work alongside software engineers to develop this autonomous vehicle and get to visit some really key tech startups across Europe. Of course, Airbnb being one of those. On the psychologist internship, you would not only act as an expert witness in this criminal case, but also advise police in sort of a simulated hostage negotiation. On the entrepreneur internship, you would be pitching that multi-billion company that you've created to real venture capitalists. The filmmaker program, of course, you will be the person live on set with high-tech equipment, such as is used, in making real films, planning and then directing and pitching those films to people who kind of are in charge of film festivals. And on our dentist program, you'll be carving your own tooth and taking part in those really critical patient dentist talks. And so just as you've heard, all of these internships are just really designed to be immersive and realistic for students. Now, I know that some people kindly submitted questions in advance of this webinar, so thank you very much. We have got answers to some of the most popular questions that we received. So as has already been mentioned, I'm very pleased to say that there is no previous experience required to attend any of our internships. We are just looking for enthusiasm and a real keenness to learn. And we do not have an application process for students. All of our internship places are allocated on a first come, first served basis. We do also have internships available for students aged 12 to 14 in 4 careers this year, which are in engineering, medicine, law, and computer science. We do, for those attending our in-person programs, have residential options available. You can see that on our website, but this is the University of London Garden Halls accommodation, which is a stone's throw away from the UCL teaching facilities in central London. The students who stay at that accommodation have ensuite rooms, 3 meals a day provided for them, and 24/7 guardianship with enhanced DBS checked teachers. I will say, for anyone who has less than fond memories of their university accommodation, it's nice to see that things have improved so much in the time since I was at university. And in terms of kind of registering a place on an internship, obviously we've all been inside for the last year. And I think, as we've seen for every live event, there is a lot of demand and a lot of anticipation for being able to be out and about again. So we found that, places are highly limited. I think most of our internships are at about 80% capacity. So if you are keen, if you think this is something that your child would like, then I would encourage you to head over to our website, which you can see on the screen there, investin.org, and you can look at our program pages and register places on those internships there. And so this brings us on to the much anticipated Q&A section of this evening. One question that has come up quite frequently is with regards to kind of our programs. Yes, everyone's sorry, if you want to kind of put your cameras on as well, that'd be fantastic. Thank you for leading the way there, Manik. Is that, as I said, those internships did go ahead last summer in 2020 with excellent feedback. And in the case that any of these internships this summer were to be completely cancelled due to COVID-19, we will be offering kind of refunds or transfers for those. So please do not worry about that. And so we'll move on now to thinking actually about questions that you guys have been submitting. And one thing that's come across a lot actually, and maybe Manik, if we could start with you. So someone has asked here sort of, what are the goals that you have for offering the internships? What do you want a student to really take away from coming?
Yeah, thanks. That's a really, really good question. Thank you. So I think what often the goal that we have to try and for our students, so obviously to inspire them to pursue a career in medicine, and not to kind of diss into other internships, but all the people who tend to come are usually interested in medicine, but there are always students who are not quite sure yet, and trying to inspire them absolutely. And then the key thing is obviously wanting to prepare them for the application process for medicine. Relative to other university degrees, the application process is really competitive and more arduous in the sense that they will have to interview, they'll have to have multiple interviews at different medical schools. And that's something that most of them will have never really done before. So going through all of that with them and preparing them for the interview, not just in terms of doing interview practice and talking about how to write a good personal statement, but actually showing them what the job entails. Because when you go to interview, what they're looking for is people who have a realistic understanding of what the job is. And so that's something that's really important for myself and for all the doctors who come, when they speak to them, when they're doing activities, when we're getting them to meet real patients and to do simulations. It's to try and put them in the shoes of a doctor, show them all the fantastic parts of the career, some of the challenges that doctors face every day, and actually give them that realistic understanding, because that actually, when they go to then apply, is what medical schools are looking for.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Manik. That's a brilliant explanation. Ella, I've got a question that's been very specifically sort of targeted at you, which is someone saying that they want to be an automotive engineer. So what could they be doing right now?
Well, on the engineering program, automotive engineer would have a fantastic insight into the diversity of the automotive industry in general. So what they're going to be experiencing in a company like McLaren, company like JLR, we've got engineers from all those different types of industries, but also we've got specific stuff. So what I wanted to say, we show the diversity of what engineering subjects have. For an automotive engineer, they'll be very excited to hear that we tear down an actual engine, and the students get to be incredibly hands-on to see how that all works. Of course, much like what Manik was saying as well, we hone in on the personal skills needed to be an automotive engineer as well. So we've got professionals like myself who employ and hire and interview these people coming into companies like McLaren, and we refine the skills that we look for. So I think teamwork, leadership and communication are things that are often missed when looking at engineers, thinking it's just a STEM sort of subject, when actually these are the skills that are going to make those caliber of students stand out. And that's what we really try and get in our programs, as well as do some really exciting stuff like all the site visits. We've got a tour going around Airbus. We've got a breakdown on these kind of engineering courses, because we know it can be really overwhelming in terms of what's out there, whether you look for industrial placements, whether you look for apprenticeships. We explain that all. And then also, like what Manik was saying about interview techniques, assessment day techniques, it's preparation, exploring the diversity that an automotive engineer would have, as well as all of other engineers, and gain a little insight into what we do on a daily.
Brilliant. I think that's a really essential thing there as well. It's about turning aspiration into a reality, a real tangible thing that a student can kind of achieve. So thank you so much, Ella. Carl, I've got a question for you, I think, which would be quite interesting. Obviously, you mentioned that, architecture is a really competitive industry to go into. And I've got a student here asking about kind of what the environment is like on the internship amongst the students.
That's an excellent question, Karina. Thank you for that. Really, it's quite interesting because I think architecture, like I always say to people that if you're interested in architecture program, try and go for the live one, because architecture is very much something that's done in person. We very much thrive on that studio culture. So having that interaction with people is actually paramount to your output. Your design process is so much richer. I remember when I was in university, the students who really did exceedingly well were the ones who stayed in that studio and exchanged ideas. They were there talking to each other, being part of this sort of like melting hub of ideas and identities. On the program, I'm really happy to know that the vibe that we get is really positive and really supportive of each other. And this is in no way, this is completely attributable to the university advisors that we bring on board. So something that we do have in the architecture program, it being a design-based course, it's a lot of design time where we have university advisors from all the top universities here in the UK sort of leading you through. So they're very much there holding your hand as you're going through this program so that you know what it's like to be studying. It's like having a big brother or a big sister just to sort of like take you through the ropes. And because you have this sort of like guidance, because you have this sort of support, it becomes a really positive atmosphere. And more often than not, we find the students that bond really well, develop into really successful teams, and then go on to win challenges that we provide them.
No, I think that's a really lovely way of putting it. And I think that support element is something that I would highlight across all of our internships. And, before programs, the students can kind of connect with each other on our platform as well, so they can get to know each other. And I think what we find is actually, oftentimes these are students who are quite passionate about their careers, about turning that aspiration into a reality. And so being around like-minded students who are equally ambitious and equally driven has a really fantastic impact on the drive that those students have as well. So thank you for that, Carl. Dominic, I've got a lot of questions at the moment about how we talk about the internships on applications going forward. And I think that's quite interesting, particularly for politics, where you might not necessarily just go for a politics degree. So yeah. How have you found students talk about their experiences on applications?
Well, one of the secret tips I actually give out on the internship is that if you want to work in politics, and I use the term work in politics incredibly broadly, we talk about being a politician, and we don't just mean being an MP or a councillor or an MEP or any of those things. Talking about just people working in politics, you don't have to study a politics degree. And I'm saying to people, do what you're interested in. Do something that you're therefore going to be really focused on, enjoy doing at university, and maybe it's going to be completely different to politics. And at the end of your, however long you're at university, 3-4 years, you can kind of say, that was a really interesting degree. I really enjoy doing that. Now I'm going to go and work in politics. Don't spoil politics for yourself by studying it and kind of, learning all the definitions of all the different things that have very little kind of bearing on, frankly, politics in the real world. I, for example, studied ancient history at university. I did 3 years Latin, kind of studying Alexander the Great, Roman Britain, the Near East, and it was amazing that I could kind of do this. I could do politics in my kind of non-uni work time, and I could do something completely different. So it was always refreshing to do the other one. And I've seen people talk about this in the chat. The transferable skills we weave through everything we do on this course are absolutely fantastic skills, no matter what you want to be able to go on to do. Because if you're able to speak publicly, write a speech, I mean, speech writing is a skill, and writing speeches is different to writing essays, but the skills you learn as part of speech writing will absolutely help you write better essays. They will absolutely help you better defend your ideas. If you want to go into something like law, you're not going to be harmed by having gone on our politics course. If anything, it will be enhanced, because you'll kind of see how people discuss things in a different setting, separate to that very stylized way you do in legal settings, but the way real people talk about things, and that I think gives you a massive competitive advantage. It's not all about what, we don't give your children the things they need. What we do is we teach them how to get them for themselves. So we teach them how to build a strong network. We teach them how to get the most out of any situation, how to kind of read people, how to deal with people who may be difficult. We do international diplomacy simulations where people who are they've got a win condition that they're keeping to their chest, and you have to work out what it is that they're trying to find, what they want from this agreement. And then you can both win as a result of that. And those are skills that will be useful for anything. And I'm really proud of the program, and I know I've said that a couple of times now, but I just think it's a really exciting program, and it's one that engenders a real excitement in politics and the kind of whole career in industry.
No, it's brilliant to see you so passionate about it, Dom. And I think what I always enjoy is that every single professional here very confidently believes that their internship is absolutely the best internship, which is always great to see. And I think one thing you highlighted there, which is so important, are these transferable skills. And that's often something time and time again that we see students neglect in personal statements or job applications. They don't think about the things that make them employable, like that communication, or something key like empathy if you want to go into medicine. And so it's very much a case of making sure students are aware of the skills they've developed, and then making sure that they mention those irrespective of whether or not, as you said, Dom, they choose to go into that career eventually. Omar, I think as someone who has a program which is, for 15 to 18 and also for sort of 12 to 14, an interesting question has come in, which is specifically saying that, our child is 12 and she can be quite shy. And so going to London can be a bit daunting. So what would you respond? Is this the right time right now for her to be trying out something like this?
Yeah, so drawing on something that Dominic has just mentioned, we're not always it's not you spend 10 days and suddenly you are lawyers. You spend these 10 days and you learn what you should be doing, what action plan you should be put in place for the next few years of your career. And a lot of the time, these application processes need certain kinds of skills that are best developed over time with practice and in a comfortable situation rather than learned in the year before you need to do applications. And so if you start when you're 12 to 14-year-olds, then by the time you get to the stage when you are doing applications, by the time you get to the stage when you need to talk about different areas of law, you will have such a stronger and more deep understanding of the industry, and a much better way to convey your experience, knowledge, and passion than if you start at a later stage. In terms of going to London at an earlier stage, everyone will be in the same situation, and we do build these really supportive environments where you'll be interacting with people your age, you'll be interacting with people a little bit older, and everyone is there to help each other out. It's not competitive, it's all very supportive, and it's okay to make mistakes and learn from them. So yeah, starting earlier is always, I think, just more beneficial. You know what to be doing at an earlier point. And again, as I've said a million times, I'm so jealous if you get to start early, because I didn't, and I wish I had these skills developed at an earlier stage.
Yeah, and I think the fact that everyone's in the same boat definitely helps. I think you'll find that 95% of the students who attend these programs, they do attend on their own, often because it can be difficult to find someone who really wants to go into their career that they know. But that means that they've created this organic network of people their own age who have that same aspiration. And so I think that was always one of the nicest things to come away and see, is people exchanging phone numbers and keeping in contact after it's happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Thank you, Omar. And I suppose, talking about kind of starting earlier on, Manik, I've got a question for you specifically about the Young Doctor and Future Doctor programs, which is just that if you were to choose to attend that Future Doctor program for younger students, would you not then be able to attend the Young Doctor program for 15 to 18-year-olds?
No, absolutely. You can attend both. You can attend the one when you're younger, and then come on the Young Doctor internship later as well. And the focus of them both is slightly different, in a sense that obviously for the younger students, it's much more kind of focused about thinking about what a doctor is, what doctors do, and thinking about what at their stage they should be doing, and thinking about what GCSEs, A levels, and a bit about that. And we then focus a lot more of our time with the older students thinking about personal statements, admissions tests, interviews, because they're going to be much closer to it. They're going to be on the precipice of, and potentially already started their personal statements. So actually, there is certainly a different focus. While through all of it, we talk about skills that doctors use, skills that they need to be developing and then demonstrating in their applications, and giving them that realistic understanding of the job. But certainly from an application perspective, for the older students, that takes up much bigger portion of the internship, as many of them might be months away from actually submitting.
No, fantastic, thank you. And I think that is important as well, is that actually now as a student, you have to start making decisions so early on, particularly for a career like medicine, about what it is that you actually want to do. And so the earlier that you can do that and make informed decisions about that, puts you miles ahead of so many students, myself included, who weren't really thinking about their careers until they even got to university. Ella, I've got, I think, an interesting question for you here about the work that you would be doing on the internship, which is what are these projects? Are they just made up? Who's made them up? And kind of how does that different from just doing a bit of traditional kind of work experience as we might all know it?
Yeah, so the projects are often developed by us in industry experts. So I know we have a fantastic aerospace project where students actually get an insight on how to use CAD, how to create an object in space on software. And this is a skill that, if you don't get taught at school, you'll get taught at university, but giving them that insight into using these tools and softwares that we've installed on the machines and had people teaching in this is a really, really good skill. So the aerospace one, we create rockets, we create wings, we simulate programs on how they would actually react in application. And then of course we do have engine teardowns and materials activities, sustainability, urban planning, like the sheer depth of engineering projects we have is really remarkable. And it's something that I think if you want to be an engineer and you think, oh, okay, I want to give this course a go, but I don't know what type of engineering to do, it's a fantastic insight into what may spark your interest. And we do have students who come out of these programs thinking, I didn't even know what an aerodynamicist did. And now I've done this project on it, and I think I'm going to develop this a little bit further. So there's a huge variety. And we try to cover really unusual types of engineering as well, whilst also listening to where the UK and engineering globally is going, with the likes of electric vehicle movement and software, robotic software engineering as well. So it's current and it's very useful and it's a great insight.
Absolutely. And I think the key differentiator is, like, as you've said, when you go to a traditional company for a bit of work experience, you are made to fit around kind of what the company is already doing and just kind of took out their current work. Whereas the internships that we're offering to students are designed for them. And that means that every bit of activity that we do is thinking about current development and also, as you've said, Ella, what we think is going to happen in the future of that career so that they're really ready on those applications and hopefully going forwards as well. Dom, I've got a question very specifically about what sorts of things you do with international politics on the internship, if you want to go into a little bit more detail on that.
Absolutely. And this is the part that we've developed and really worked on producing something that is an incredible experience. So for this 10-day internship, there will be a kind of an international crisis that requires resolving. So we'll be going through steps that are related to international development, that are related to the way the UN works, that are related, so kind of global international organizations, that are related to the way that kind of the relationship between different countries, so bilateral relationship. We also have done kind of workshops on how you develop a foreign policy as an individual country. Like, what are the things that you might be looking to do? What are the things that you're looking to avoid? How do you create something that will work with other countries? So we bring in Hannah, who works with UN Women. We've had in Mark from the UN Secretary General's office. We've had a couple of people from DFID, as it used to be, working abroad. We've got somebody working for the World Food Programme who's coming in this time. And one of the things I'm really excited about for our 10-day internship as well is that there'll be, if you sign up for the full 10 days, towards the end of that, there'll also be this kind of modern tech day. And now we're still working out all the kind of details of this, but as it currently stands, there's going to be someone there who has been absolutely at the kind of the pinnacle of this kind of interaction between technology and modern government and sort of law enforcement. So this is somebody who has been at the highest levels of UK law enforcement. They have, represented the National Crime Agency. They've sat in COBRA meetings, the people who run our national security in times of crisis, talking about that interplay between foreign governments, talking about the UK government, what is necessary to do policing effectively, but what is ethical as well. And we will be doing a kind of a workshop all around that, an interactive exercise where people will be considering those things themselves. And to talk about the group of people that we've got, frankly, it is the quality of the students that come on the programs that make them so fantastic. Because as I've said, politics isn't something where you get one qualification and you're ready to do it. It's something where your ability to interact with different people is so important. And so that is the strength of our program, is that we put all of the young people together and they are working off each other and producing more elaborate kind of solutions. And all the way through, whether you're really confident of your kids' ability to kind of speak publicly, whether you think they're quite shy, the whole way through we've set these kind of separate stretch points so that you can do it and you can really enjoy it and it can inform you and it can be educational. But if you're somebody who requires that little bit extra to actually have to work hard, if your kid is, exceptional at certain things, there are points that will still stretch them, but they aren't done in such a way that they exclude people who aren't so sure of themselves.
Oh, fantastic. And I think never was there more timely teaching on dealing with international crisis. So thank you, Dominic. Omar, I think we've got a lot of questions here. And I think Dom actually mentioned it as well, about what distinguishes a 5-day program from a 10-day program. So someone who knows InvestIN very well, perhaps you give a little bit more detail about kind of what those key differences are.
So it does, to a large extent, depend on each program, but I tend to try and categorize it as the 5 days, to me, are focused on the legal skills. Day 1 or day 2 and 3 will be the murder trial, and in that the students will be examining witnesses, getting involved in a murder trial from the moment an arrest happens all the way through to the trial, examining witnesses, making difficult legal decisions and using tactics. They will be advocating, making closing speeches, and then in other days they will be doing corporate law negotiation, like Dominic mentioned, knowing how to get what you want from someone in a negotiation type situation, and they'll also be advocating in the Supreme Court. So legal skills in the first 5 days, although there is some overlap. And then the second 5 to 6 to 10, I see as the legal landscape. It's understanding the key legal areas, where law happens, who the barristers and lawyers and solicitors are, what they're doing and where they're doing it. It's going to universities and see where lawyers are starting out at an academic stage. What does it mean to study law academically? How does that differ to practicing law in the industry? And then it's learning about, again, Dominic has mentioned this, the future of law, the overlap between technology and law, and how is it pushing the boundaries of practice. And then it's focusing about yourself within that landscape, and how do you improve yourself? How do you develop yourself professionally? And we have a whole day dedicated to developing those skills, practicing, talking about your experiences. So yeah, first 1 to 5 days I see as kind of the legal or industry specific skills. Perhaps the other programs are a little bit different. And then the second 6 to 10 slot of days I see as the landscape of the industry, understanding where it happens and how to get there.
I think it's that depth that's really key as well, and particularly in those last 2 days of the 10-day internship, the opportunity to really focus in on developing this personalized career plan, basically, so that a student really comes away confident in knowing what their next steps need to be. So not just seeing the internship as kind of the end of their career journey, with a lot that kind of left to come. So thank you so much, Omar. And Carl, we've been getting a lot of questions about what you take away from an internship. And obviously I could say, guys, absolutely everyone who attends gets a certificate of attendance to kind of use for UCAS applications and stuff. But maybe, Carl, you could talk a bit more about sort of things like perhaps a portfolio kind of material that students get to kind of take with them going forwards.
Certainly, Karina. So architecture is one of those professions that's really interesting, in that if you were going to go into university, say you're an A-level student now and you're going to university next year or in 2 years' time, you will need to present a portfolio of work. And this is almost central to your application, and this is a topic that's very close to my heart, because I didn't actually have that privilege of studying art or any sort of design program. Before that, I wish they taught architecture at schools, but they don't. So we've got to go with this. It's the next best thing. But actually, it's really important to consider the portfolio as an exercise. And I sort of had to figure it out myself. And I think, echoing what Omar said earlier, this program has been tailored so well to that level, where a lot of the students who come on board at the beginning of it, sure, that some of them will come in brilliant, they're well developed, they've got the best art training in the world that will lead them to the best schools in architecture later on. But there will be students who don't have so much of that itch, or maybe they felt like they didn't really get enough guidance around it. So when you attend the program, both for the 5-day and the 10-day internship, you are getting the kind of guidance, not just from university advisors who are doing the same thing that your child will be doing in university, but also from professionals like myself. I'm not the only professional there. There are a whole range of professionals working for some top practices throughout London and around the world, and they will help you sort of craft your portfolio into the direction that you want to take it to. So there's never any sort of like telling your child, like, this is what we need to do to get you in there. There's always a sort of deeper sense of exploration. And we really try and drill down into each and individual person. And we do that through the sort of like more personalized one-to-one training, and also training in smaller groups of about 5 or 6 people. And we try and really get into the heart of what your child's trying to achieve and direct them into that direction. The briefs that we create for the program, they're not particularly, they're not especially special. Architecture briefs, they come from the real world. They're very much trying to solve a problem out there. One of our briefs, the Roman Road brief, they're very much tackling the problem of a lack of diversity in a borough of London. These are things that the real world has told us is a problem, and we're taking it, and then we're asking the children to come on board to start thinking about what it is that's interesting to them. And it's really interesting to note as well that these portfolios often end up being very varied, very individual, entirely excellent, and they don't necessarily have to be that they are targeted at a program in architecture. There's a lot of variety out there now in universities in terms of how you can pursue that architecture education. You can actually take that portfolio and apply for a product design course. You can take that portfolio and apply for interior design. These are all valuable professions in their own right, but it's worth noting that architecture often leads you there. And that's probably my takeaway. I think the portfolio is a really valuable exercise. And if anything, the internships get your kids, even if they're probably a little bit apprehensive, a bit unsure, like I was at their age, a bit unsure, it makes them take the first step. And that's what's really important. And then after that, they can carry on developing that after the program.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's exactly the thing to take away. It's the first step. It's definitely not the last one. And having seen some of those portfolios, I think they are absolutely fantastic when they come away with the programs. So thank you, Carl. I've been getting quite a few questions about some of the other opportunities that we have available. So just to quickly address a few of those, someone's asked if on the Young Vet Summer Internship there will be suturing, so live stitching a real animal. I am not for the animal, sad to say that that won't be on a live animal. So much like when you are at medical school or veterinary school, you do suturing on things like sponges. And in our case, we often like to use bananas as well. So just to hone your technique and practical ability to do that. But you will be visiting farms and handling live animals and learning how to handle them. So you will definitely be getting experience with real animals. For the investment banker program, someone's asked for a little bit more detail about some of the simulations and activities available on there. I suppose I will speak to two of my favorite ones. The first, which is the live trading session that we have. So simulating the trading floor where students get split up into the words of kind of traders and salespeople and the researchers and analysts. And they have to work as teams to kind of work out what the value of products might be and compete and bet against each other on that, which always really gets the energy in the room pumping. Competitiveness always works great for that. And also live trading on the London stock market, particularly for things like investment banking, where spring weeks will happen in your first year of university, using some of these software such as Amplify that kind of the top tier banks use on their graduate schemes. Students are able to trade live and again, compete against each other in a kind of a fun environment to get used to what technically that looks like. And so I suppose drawing back round to Manik, obviously we've been talking a bit about, we had the veterinary science question there about what's real and what's not. But we've also been getting, again, quite a few questions about what those key differentiators are between the younger age groups internships and our kind of 15 to 18. And I don't suppose if there is an example of an activity that you have for the younger year groups that you might not have for older year groups, or a way you've adapted it to make it more accessible.
Yeah, so I think, when we've had younger students on the programs, I've always been really impressed at kind of actually the caliber and the level that they are able to answer questions. But certainly we spend a bit more time kind of thinking about applying what they might already know about the human body, and thinking about where that can go wrong in terms of when an illness or disease can occur, and then thinking about the sort of how that then translates into a patient in front of you. And we will have in our internship the opportunity to speak to real patients, but certainly the focus will be thinking about bringing the knowledge that they've already got from maybe school, stretching that a bit further and then applying that to a patient in front of them. And that's going to be really important to kind of make that link. And I think that differentiate from the older students, where actually what you're going to push them further to think about is actually if you've got a patient in front of you, like they will meet, who is telling you some symptoms, and actually you're trying to actually figure out what's wrong with them. And actually what we end up doing is less hand holding at that stage, and actually show them that they've got some of the skills that doctors use every day to help figure out what's wrong with patients. Because actually a lot of them are really actually quite impressive. I teach medical students as well, and I've certainly had students on our internships who operate at the level of kind of first, second year medical students, clearly spending a lot of their time actually pursuing this passion and learning more about the career themselves. And I think that's that difference about kind of when we're kind of bringing younger students along in terms of and showing them what doctors do, and then giving them the opportunity to speak to real patients. But actually for the older students, actually kind of throwing them in the deep end a bit more and saying, okay, can you figure out what's wrong with this patient? Not just me tell you necessarily what's wrong. So I think that's really key. And I think certainly with the older students, they get a bit more opportunities to meet a bigger variety of patients in terms of the types of diseases and the types of problems that they might encounter. And certainly one of the things that we do with the older students is the emergency simulations in a kind of an education centre at a hospital, where essentially, like I mentioned before, these robotic patients where actually there's someone controlling it from behind the screen. And you're kind of saying, actually, this person's come in and it's an emergency simulation. So you basically have got a limited amount of time, a limited amount of information to essentially not just figure out what's wrong with the patient, but start treatment, because actually this is life-threatening. And kind of actually really putting them on the spot, which for the younger students, I'm sure actually probably would manage quite well with that, but we have to help them a bit more and thinking more about applying knowledge that they already have about the human body and why that might go wrong, and what we then have to think about asking our patients about that.
No, I think that's a fantastic way of describing it, is taking it first as building on what a student might already know. So making it really accessible through kind of, biology that they might have had at school, and then building that up really slowly. And I think that's a key thing. And oftentimes we get students asking us, what preparation do I need to do in advance of this? What books do I read? What podcasts do I listen to? And we can always say, like, you don't have to do anything to come on one of these programs. Absolutely, if you're motivated and want to look at things, please do. But you will be able to kind of understand and enjoy things just as well if you do really come on knowing nothing or having kind of no preconceptions about what that might be. So thank you so much for that, Manik. Dom, I'm getting a lot of questions about whether the professionals do really stay in contact with the students who come on the programs, and obviously in a career notorious for needing your networking prowess. I wonder if you might speak to that.
Yeah, a really interesting question, and kind of this, frankly, the answer is yes. We have this fantastic thing, InvestIN Connect, which is an InvestIN kind of piece of proprietary software, which is basically, it's a kind of a safe LinkedIn that isn't, full of a load of kind of weird quasi business people. We connect all of the students who've been on our program with the professionals, and the professionals post, and they can kind of talk to them about the things. And I know full well that I've had plenty of emails off people when we do in-person programs. I have seen the MPs that we've had along handing out hundreds of business cards, frankly. They do, as far as I'm aware, stay in touch. I've never had anyone come to us and say, oh, I've been trying to get in touch with somebody and they've not responded. Actually, it's been the other way around. It's been,
yeah.
Oh, does anyone want to talk to me about the stuff that we discussed? Because one of the real delights of them when we do them in person is how long people stay on after the event has finished and stand around and they're chatting about things, and you'll see these kind of 20-person groups listening, hanging on every word that's coming from some of our professionals, the ones that work at the UN, the ones that members of parliament, ministers, and look, they do all stay in touch as far as I'm aware. I'm sure at some point somebody's not responded to something, but broadly speaking, they stay in touch. And, actually, lots of it's not about staying in touch with these people who are our professionals, who are often 20, 30, 40 years into a career, but it's about building those relationships with the young people they're on a course with, who are going in at the same time as them and will be a network for 20, 30 years while they're moving up through. I know that I've met a couple of people who've come to work in Parliament after they've gone, they've done it at kind of 17 and have come to do internships in Parliament, and I've met them there. So yeah, there's definitely a relationship, but it's more than it being about, oh, I've now got a network with Caroline Flint. It's more about what network do you build with your fellow students on the course.
Absolutely. And I think that's a key thing here. Hopefully, as everyone can see from sort of asking questions to our professionals this evening, everyone is incredibly keen to kind of get students moving forward with their career, and to provide as much assistance as possible. And I think that's one thing that's really essential, is that often when you're at a school age, a professional can feel like some very strange, faraway person that you can't imagine even sort of engaging with or speaking to. And yet by being able to do that on an internship like this, they realize that professionals are just people, people who are once in exactly the same position that they are in now. And I think in many ways that does help kind of their aspirations. Yes, go on, Carl.
Sorry, just want to jump in there really quickly because I thought that was a fantastic point. So interesting enough, we have a career coaching session in architecture, and there's a slide that specifically says, so what can I do now? And on it says, LinkedIn, make a page. And and that's usually the end of the first day. And you'll be surprised, like we are surprised all the time, how what we go off, and then that's what we call the waterfall of LinkedIn invites. And then, and I've had it personally myself, because my LinkedIn just gets swarmed by these students. And it's really interesting to see how these students take that on board, and they get really motivated, and they see that, oh, actually, you know, coming from all these professionals who are maybe 5, 10 years ahead of them in their career, you know, they have done the same thing. They've gone out to networking events and they've seen the value of doing that. And then it's just like, you see the click, you see the switch just flicker in their eyes. They just like, click on, and then they're like, oh, I have to do this too. Oh no, it's me. I have to take the first step. And then they go up, sign up for LinkedIn, and they network with everyone. I know everyone gets at least two to 5 contacts after that. And, you know, I can't really just, you know, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm pretty sure a lot of these contacts have led to places. And I'm not dropping anything here, but, you know, one InvestIN student might actually be on an internship with me right now. So I'm going to leave it there.
Creating the mystery. I love that, Carl. I think you're absolutely right. I think this is one thing that students do miss out a lot, is when I go and speak to them in schools, you know, you as a teacher or a parent can say to them, you need to do this, and oftentimes in one ear and out the other, but the moment that you get someone they don't know who's a professional telling them to do it, that's actually when you see an incredible amount of kind of action and movement from those students. And so I think you're exactly right. The waterfall of LinkedIn invites is definitely a recurring theme across the internships, and is a fantastic thing to see. Ella, I suppose I'd like to speak to quite a specific question that's come up a couple of times, and I'm sure it's one that you get asked plenty, which is that we have some students who say, you know, I'm a girl and I do want to go into engineering, but I always find whenever I do anything, it's just other boys there. I suppose, you know, how that speaks to your experience and how you would encourage students or girls not to be intimidated by that.
Absolutely. It's such an important question. I get it on every session that I attend. And the great thing about what we do InvestIN is we highlight women in these roles. We sort of shred those stereotypes, like, yes, there are people out there doing this. And I do talk a lot from my personal experience. I think being a female in STEM subjects, there is a gender disparity, especially in the automotive industry. So I do my best to sort of shred a light and what I go through on a day-to-day basis. And I sort of come to the conclusion after, and I'm happy to do one-to-ones with all the girls and the boys who are going to our sessions. I get a lot of questions about, you know, high performance environments and deadlines and the stresses associated with engineers, and we shred all those stereotypes. But what I really tend to encourage is that, yes, I'm going to be honest, there are fewer females in these roles, there are fewer females in STEM, but based on what I've done and my personal sort of journey through it, which I elaborate quite a bit, and girls do say that they enjoy like hearing my story and hearing someone who's recently gone through, you know, a recent graduate as well, is that to use that kind of spotlight that you are put into to motivate you. And I have been sort of going to McLaren and being like one of the only female engineers there, I've kind of used it to my advantage. And I wouldn't be doing things like InvestIN, I wouldn't be doing all the public speaking events if it weren't for the fact that I felt that we need better female representation. However, you know, since being associated with InvestIN and since being in the industry for about 4 to 5 years now, I've seen drastic improvements in terms of the number of females getting employed into product development, the number of women taking up STEM subjects, the number of girls coming to our programs. It's fantastic. So the improvement is there. And I do offer one-to-one advice in those sessions, after sessions, about girls getting into the industry. So it's nothing to be afraid of. Let it motivate you, girls. And yeah, it's exciting.
Absolutely, and I think that's the interesting part. It's actually later on when you see girls sometimes self-selecting away from those industries, and actually there is so much opportunity out there and so many fantastic initiatives to get you in there. I would 100% echo what Ella has just said. Get in there, do not be intimidated, and go and own that space, as all girls I'm sure do. Thank you, Ella. And Omar, I've actually got some questions coming through from parents whose children, sorry, are already coming on internships, which is fantastic. And that is just saying, you know, what should I be doing now with my son or my daughter prior to attending the internship to make sure they do get the most out of coming?
So thanks for the question. That's an excellent question. So as we've already said, there's nothing that we would say you have to do. You can come to these internships and you will understand what's happening. It will be accessible to you. If you want to make the most of it, there are some top tips that I would give. Two, the first is to have a think about what it is you want out of the internship before you start. This is something that I try to structure at the start of the internship and get them to fill a reflective sheet and just consider, what is it you want to gain? What skills do you want to work on? And what questions do you want answered? Because if you have a clear picture of that in your head and a list somewhere of all the questions you want answered before you begin, you will pick up on the opportunities to ask those questions, and you will focus on the activities and simulations that bring out those skills. So have a reflection about what it is you want out of the internship before you start. And the second thing is there will be some internships where there is a little bit of pre-reading that we send out before, and just do the pre-reading if you like, especially with the law programs, to give students an accurate sense of what it is to work as a lawyer. We give them bundles and we give them information, and it is a little bit detailed, but the idea is not to overwhelm them. It's okay if you don't finish the pre-reading or don't fully understand it, but it's to get you beginning to exercise that analytical skill, that ability to consume large volumes of information and to use it in a way that is professional, tactical, and concise. And so do the pre-reading and approach it to the best of your ability before approaching the program if pre-reading has been sent.
Absolutely. I think for law particularly, that's always an important one.
Yeah.
And I would say as well, another thing that students should definitely do is to kind of join the platform that we have that Don mentioned, and to take the opportunity before they've come on the internship to speak with other people who will be joining there. I think often what I find is that just like at the first day of school, when you don't know anybody, it can be quite intimidating going up to people. But actually, if you've already spoken with them online and kind of networked with them a bit, it makes it much more fun straight from the get-go for them to be able to sit down and say, I've spoken to you, I know you, I'm really excited to meet you. And we've had a couple of questions coming in about specifically what differentiates our live online and our in-person programs. And I'd say, so we've had one specifically about dentistry. Obviously for our in-person dentist internship, those physical kind of trips and visits to dental practices are things that we don't do for an online program, and particularly things like carving a tooth, which is always very popular amongst our students, isn't necessarily replicated in the same way. One thing that we do focus on a lot is that kind of patient-dentist relationship and those key, emotional intelligence and empathy things that students, again, very often miss out on when they do an application. Oftentimes students do have fantastic examples of dexterity, but don't have those examples of kind of intercommunication skills. And so particularly there's a real focus on speaking to patients and asking them questions and listening to what they are saying. And I often find that, that key communication skill of listening is often something that students do kind of really need to practice a bit. And so as we come,
sorry, Karina, can I just about
Yeah,
that specifically about the question about the online and in person, because last summer was the first time that we did online internships and in-person internships for medicine, and they're both very they're both very excellent programs, and they both provide lots of great things. I think with the in-person stuff though, where we get the opportunity to kind of go into a teaching hospital setting and do small group activities where they can meet real patients, do simulations, go on a ward round, and all those kind of activities. Whereas in our online program, we've tried to replicate that as much as possible. And so we do a live stream of a ward round, live stream of GP's clinic, and other things like that, to try and replicate that as much as possible and give the opportunity. But in the in-person, certainly it's that small group being able to be in a pair or three and speaking to a patient in that setting, which really stands apart.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that that's a really key thing there as well that always comes up. And so, as we come to the end of the webinar this evening, I would like to thank all of you for being here with us and for talking with such passion and enthusiasm about the internships that you're part of. I said one last quick fire round for all of you before we say, farewell. It's just this quick question of, so I'm coming on an internship and we've had it already, but what do I need to do right now? And so Manik, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you the least time to prepare this mentally. Just a really quick answer. What do they need to do right now?
So quick answer, really, honestly, not a huge amount. I think just making sure you bring your passion and your enthusiasm, and there will be some stuff that's sent out beforehand to read. But I think actually turning up and just being enthusiastic is probably going to be the most important thing. We will make sure that you have everything that you need to get the most out of the internship when you arrive, I promise.
Brilliant, thank you, Manik. And on to Ella.
Yes, very similar. I would say our internships are all geared around both the young and futures, are geared around inspiring the kids into engineering. So don't bring much with you. We obviously do send out packs prior to the internships, but just have a think about questions. So if you're in school and you're not sure what subjects to do, bring questions along. If this is your opportunity, you're never going to get a situation where you've got such a diverse number of people from all these different industries, all these different types of engineers. So make sure that you ask what you want to and get what you want out of it. Personal development is a big part of our programs as well. So if you do have ideas that you want to put in your personal statement, if you do have hobbies you want opinions on and stuff like that, bring that. But in terms of reading around the subject, our programs are so diverse and the activities are crazy, so you can't really prepare for that. But just bring your passion, bring your energy, and get ready for some good networking.
Fantastic, thank you, Ella. It's going to become more difficult for you guys now. Carl.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to go slightly countercurrent here and say something that's not been said before, because I think in architecture, one of the key things that will get you there is work ethic. And I think for what we do, and we have the discussion again and again, like what is a good work ethic to have as a student? I think start compiling your body of work today. If you want to go down an architectural career, a design career, an interior design career, it doesn't matter what kind of career, what kind of design career you're looking for, start compiling your portfolio today. Don't leave it to the last minute like I did, but start it today, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be beautiful. I think the key thing here is that we're not looking for diamonds. We're looking for the sort of like the rough coal that we can polish and get there. We just want to know what you're interested in so we can develop you further. And that portfolio can be your statement that will get you into university. It is really, really simple to start doing it today. A girl from the last program that just concluded a week ago brought on board a card that she drawn for Mother's Day. This was on Mother's Day. And, the way she described it, we were able to unpack in the program itself that her interest in architecture sort of stemmed from this sort of like sense of identity and where she came from. And so this childhood home that she had, that she presented in the Mother's Day card, became the basis for her portfolio. It became the starting point for her to go off, take that idea, that germ in her head, and develop it to become eventually, a hopefully what to be a stellar entry portfolio to university.
Brilliant, thank you, Carl. It's actually a really lovely self-reflective example. Dom, on to you.
Thank you. I've had a little bit longer to think about this, and delighted to have had a little bit longer to think about it. And so maybe I won't be able to be terribly original, but I can be at the very least kind of fulsome. A willingness to kind of there are kind of 3 willingnesses and 2 reflective things I decided. A willingness to learn, actually don't, because, politics is so often about what you believe, but don't just think that because you already believe it, you've finished that journey on that idea. Like, think that you might want to develop those thoughts further. A willingness to get stuck in, because frankly, what you're going to get from the course is the more you do while you're there, because that's just how these work. And a willingness to be open-minded and actually kind of talk to people who you maybe don't agree with. We've had some really special moments where people who've been passionately kind of anti what we've been talking about, or passionately pro what we've been talking about, have actually had to think about what they really believe when they've been arguing for it, and been asked to argue for things they don't agree with as part of the kind of the discussion part of what we do. Also, read what we send you for the pre-reading, because you're going to have so much of a better time understanding what you're doing. And in terms of the self-reflectiveness, think about what it is that your children enjoy doing. Like, what is it that what parts of the job do they enjoy? Because again, with politics, you can really specialize in which bit of it you're going to do, and what they think they want to do and what they enjoy doing, so that you can so that when we're talking about all the different career streams, they can be better guided to get the answers that they want and need.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Dom. And Omar, I'm sorry you've already been asked this question before, but do you have anything to add to anything that everyone else has said?
So despite having the longest, I have the least impressive start or response to this question, except for this planned intro. But what I was going to say is, in addition to everything that everyone else has said, just things to do now. Take a moment to congratulate yourself. There aren't many kids at your age who are thinking, in addition to my studies, in my own free time, I am going to go and spend 10 days of my summer holiday learning about the industry I want to do and learning how to take myself from where I am now to becoming as successful a professional as I can be. And that is inspirational and just amazing. So if you are taking this step, if you are taking this time out to develop yourself, then that is very impressive, and you should be very proud of yourself, or your kids in this case.
Brilliant. Thank you, Omar. I think that is a really lovely note to end on this evening. So, for aspirational children and for parents looking to kind of, push their child and get them aspiring to go into these competitive careers, I hope you feel that you have learned a lot about the internships that we have on offer, and have enjoyed meeting some of our really fantastic professionals this evening. Thank you all again, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in this evening for giving up your time. We're going to shortly end the Zoom call, but as we do, please stay on Slido for one final question from us. But from everyone here at InvestIN, I hope you have a really lovely evening, and we very much hope to see your children on our internships later this year.
Thank you all for coming, from me as well.
Seconding that.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Yeah.